Hello everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty. As part of the Counterfeit Kit Challenge design team, once a month we'll build a scrapbooking kit and then also create our own supplies to add into that kit. And we call this project the Forgery on the 4th. And I am here to show you how I created some die-cut ephemera pieces, and not just a few, but an entire collection. So let's dive into some of my thoughts on this project. First up, whenever we do kit building in our forgeries, we are inspired by an actual kit that exists in the world, and this kit is from Hip Kit Club, and I'll link you up to the original so that you can check that out. I was inspired by the die cut pack, but the photos on the website were pretty hard to enlarge, and so I did grab a screenshot off of a fellow team member's YouTube unboxing of that original kit, and I did use that to help inform what I was going to do. It was full of a lot of icons that were kind of cozy, homey icons. And when I built my scrapbook kit, I did include this piece of like a woodland critter paper in there. So combining those two things together, I'm coming up with a theme for my ephemera, die-cut ephemera pack. And it's kind of this winter woodland theme going on. So let's go ahead and take a look at the pieces that I created. I used mostly stamps to do this, because I have a collection of them and I need to put them to more use. And if I had associated matching dies, I used those as well, and that came in pretty handy for some of the smaller shapes. But I also did handmade tags here, and I'll cut to a clip of showing you a little bit of how I did that, including some of the stripe creation there, which you don't need any stamps for, just a paper trimmer and some ink, and you can make those ones on your own. So to make the tag bases, you probably already know this, but I wanted to show it just in case anybody is new to this kind of thing. With a rectangle, I will just mark the top two corners equally on the left and right side, and the top and bottom. And when you slice in between those marks, then you get a nice tag shape, and a hole punch finishes it off into a tag shape. And then there's a basic fishtail banner, which you can freehand with the scissors, or there's this other method where you can fold it and then cut from any point on that fold down to the tips. And I think that one comes out a little more even, but you risk folding your paper and creasing it. So with a few of my tags, I'm going to go ahead and do some kind of free range inking here. I'm just going to use Post-it notes to mask off parts of this to create little stripes. And this is super easy to do. And if you don't have a lot of stamps and stuff, it's a great way to make some of your own embellishments without needing a lot of supplies. Now I'm going to pick and choose my colors, and with that masking in place, I'm just going to use a sponge dauber to ink up a little tiny stripe. And the tricky part of this process really is taking those Post-it notes off and then realigning them onto that existing stripe and then getting the next stripe in place. So here I go trying to line it up, and I do the best I can, and then I will continue this process of inking with as many colors as I want. So you can see some of those different stripes on there, and a couple of different techniques I used between, leaving gaps in between the stripes or doing an ombre color pattern or, whatnot. So you can see those. I also have some solid inking there where I just smush the ink pad down onto my tag shape. And I like having the balance of solid inking versus, stamping that ends up looking visually lighter and brighter. So I like that combo. And next up here, I'm going to be showing you a couple of tags that I created using punches, including those little tags with the circle at the top. This tag here has a little kind of scroll bit at the top, and I used a partial punching technique that I knew about a long time ago, but I had completely forgotten until I saw another YouTuber doing it recently. So let me share how we did that with you. So if you know how wide your punch is, and I really like circle punches, I think they're very flexible for a lot of things, and they're easy to do this technique with. If you know how wide your punch is, just cut your paper slightly narrower than the narrowest part of your punch, and that comes up with the other shape that I use. The scroll shape is a little more complicated, but then you can kind of slide this paper through and out the top part of the other side of the punch. And then when you punch, you're only going to get that partial side that is included in there. And that's a great way for making a little rounded top tag, and then punch a hole in it, and there you go. But I did the exact same thing with this scroll shape, so you can experiment with your punches and see what kind of things you can come up with. Another thing I really like to use punches for is to come up with these border pieces. And here you can see I've stamped on them just to decorate them up. But I like that the length and shape of these add a variety to my embellishment pack, so it's not all samey. Here you can see these little sweater prints. I did stamp one of them on some pattern paper. So feel free, if you don't have a lot of stamps, to pull out some pattern paper and either fussy cut it or punch it out. Like if there's little snowflake icons that would easily punch out with the circle punch, things like that. So there are lots of ideas on how to put these things together, even if you don't have the supplies that I've got going on. Now here's an example of images that I had the matching die for, and that little basket image I did not have a matching die for. So let me give you one of my kind of favorite quickie fussy cutting tips. If you hate fussy cutting, this might help you. So one thing you can do to get kind of an even border around your image, if you don't mind that white border that a lot of die cut ephemera has, and I actually prefer that. It's a little harder if you like your die cuts to be like exactly up to the edge, but to get an even white border, I flip my stamp upside down and then tack it down to the page. Of course, if you're using rubber stamp, that won't work, but any of the photopolymer stamps will kind of stick to the page. And then I take a pencil and make sure I hold it straight up and down, and then I will just trace around that photopolymer, which has its own border to it when they manufacture it. And once I have that tracing done, then I've got an even pencil line that I can follow with my scissors, and I don't have to think about it too much. Now, I did trace this pattern before I stamped, but you can do it either way. You can stamp first and then do the border, or you can do the border first and then stamp. It's just kind of up to how you want to work. All right, sharing some other thoughts here. It is great to use tiny stamps in your sets to create little scenes on these smaller tabs. And then in terms of coloring, there are certain images in there that I want to have more color, but instead of using kind of that coloring book style where I just stamp in black and then color it in, I personally like to ink up my stamps in the colors that I want them to be. And this tool is newer to me, and I'm really liking it right now, where it's got a little foam on the end of a wood handle, and you can just tap that foam into your ink pad and then tap that onto your stamp, and that will ink up areas of your stamp. And here I have got a little penguin, and I'm actually doing an unusual color scheme for my penguin, which it turns out I really like. I did not think I would ever do something like this, but I've got yellow and pink going on this same stamp. And then if you're selectively inking your stamp, it's a good idea to kind of huff your breath on it so that it re-moistens anything that has dried on you. And then go ahead and stamp it down, and you've got a cute little image. Now you can do this technique with markers, which is what I usually do, but I really wanted to use the colors of my ink pad. So that's why I use that little tool instead. All right, and then I think the final way that I used to add color was just some super simple watercoloring. So I've got a little damp brush. I've squished some ink down onto, that's just the lid, but you can squish it onto, anything, a stamp block or whatever. And then a little spritz of water, and I pick up that color, and I will just do a swishy stripe of color onto the image, because working on plain cardstock, it does not take color well. And know that as soon as your paintbrush hits the paper, it will just kind of suck that color and paint in. So you want to just kind of keep it quick and light, and then you can just kind of swipe color across your image just to add a little bit of detail. Oh, and one other thing that I do like to do is ink the edges of some of my pieces so that they're not so starkly white. And that way it pulls in more of the colors that I've chosen and kind of helps them look just a little bit more finished. All right, to wrap up my thought process here, I just want to kind of list the things that were in my head as I was working. I picked a theme, I chose a color palette, I chose icons in various sizes that will go with my theme, and then I chose punches, dies, whatever I had on hand, or even DIY materials to create a variety of shapes and sizes of tags. I left white space on some of the tags. I left more solid color on some of the tags, and that plays into layering these pieces up when I get to scrapbooking. I wasn't afraid to use teeny tiny stamps to create just little decorations on edges. I also stamped off the edges on some of my tags, and I think that helps create a more finished look as well. I was also sure to use some of the more textural or pattern type stamps in there just to create some elements. And then I used both those textural pattern elements along with imagery to create little scenes. And so that helped me come up with a complete set of ephemera. Now, why do this when I could just go out and buy something? And there's a couple of reasons. If you're on a spending freeze, maybe this is something that you can do. Or perhaps you just are like me and you have a ready stash of supplies already in your craft room, and you have a supply of scrap pieces of paper that you want to use up. And so all of these thoughts came together to make this project happen. All right, that is it for this video. I will probably be back next week with one or maybe two more videos for you. We shall see. And until then, I hope you have an artful day.